Hello everyone, the Flying Scotsman here. Just over 25 years ago, on April the 6th, 1992, Windows 3.1 was born. This new version of Windows was not as much of a major upgrade as its predecessor Windows 3.0 had been, but it did have small refinements and feature upgrades that made the OS a game changer and brought Microsoft a little bit closer to their dream of a computer on every desk and in every home running Microsoft software. Just as an added note to this, Microsoft Windows 3.1 was the first version of Windows that I actually learned how to use properly, and it was on a Windows 3.1 machine that I learned how to touch type. Anyway, so what made Windows 3.1 and its derivatives Windows 3.11 and Windows for Workgroups, both 3.1 and 3.11, so popular? Why was it such a game changer for Microsoft? Something that made it so much more than just a fancy DOS shell. These are things that I hope to explore in this video. But before we jump into Windows 3.1, we must go back to the year 1990. In 1990, Margaret Thatcher's reign of terror was over and she was replaced by John Major as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. But not before she'd actually imposed the highly unpopular poll tax. The Simpsons were making it big on American TV screens with their first season of full-length cartoons. Saddam Hussein ordered the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, which kick-started the First Gulf War. East and West Germany reunified, and the Berlin Wall's deconstruction began. Belle Biv DeVoe was also telling us that that girl is poison. And on May the 22nd, 1990, Microsoft released Windows 3.0. Now, Windows 3.0 was the first version of Windows that was considered a commercial success. Windows 3.0 itself originated in 1989 when a couple of guys called David Wise, sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, and Murray Sargent independently decided to develop a protected mode Windows as an experiment. They cobbled together a rough prototype and presented it to company executives who were impressed enough to approve it as an official project. Now, I must apologise at this point because a lot of this script is going to sound Wikipedia-esque. I did try changing it up, but I believe I made a poor job of it, so please forgive me. Windows 3.0 succeeded Windows 2.1x and included a significantly revamped user interface, as well as technical improvements to make better use of the memory management capabilities of Intel's 8286 and 8386 processors. Text mode programs written for MS-DOS can be run within a window, a feature that had been previously available in a more limited form with Windows 386 2.1, making the system usable as a crude multitasking base for legacy programs. However, this was of limited use for the home market, where most games and entertainment programs continued to require raw DOS access. The MS-DOS Executive File Manager and Program Launcher was replaced with the icon-based and program-centric Program Manager, and the list-based File Manager, splitting files and programs. The control panel, previously available as a standard-looking applet, was remodeled after the one in the classic Mac OS. It centralized system settings, including control over the color scheme of the interface. While Windows 3.0 was Microsoft's best operating system to date, it did have its fair share of problems. Firstly, it had a fair few bugs. Secondly, it did not have any multimedia capability. It could not work with any sound cards of the time. And of course, in the late 80s, early 90s, sound cards were starting to become very popular in IBM compatible PCs. Windows 3.00A was released to fix a lot of bugs, and in 1991, Windows for Multimedia PCs was released, which added multimedia support to Windows 3.0, including support for sound and video. However, instead of me just talking about it, why don't we have a wee hands-on? So this is what you see when you first launch Windows 3.0. This is the program manager, and as you can see, you have various and sundry program groups, some of which come as parts of Windows, some of which are installed as part of other applications. Now, the large black mouse pointer you see here was not native to Windows 3.0, or indeed any version of Windows 3.x. It is in fact an add-on that Microsoft themselves made available that I actually installed because I actually kind of need this mouse pointer to actually be able to see what I'm doing. So let's have a look at this then. So we can open a program group such as Word for Windows 2, or we can open another one such as Accessories, and you see that you've got the program groups, they overlap. You have the multi-document interface present in Windows itself. If I was to take, oh yeah, okay, so drag and dropping does work in Windows 3.0. Okay, that was a bit of a surprise, but okay. But we can also take a look at File Manager, so you can tell that the Program Manager is program-centric. If you want to actually manage files as well, you can go to the File Manager. And there you see you've got all your drives, and the CD-ROM drive is acknowledged as a CD drive. Look, it's a CD there. So let's say, for example, I could create a new directory. Okay, it's always going to be in capitals. Then again, that's okay because directory names were not case sensitive. So now I've got myself a wee workspace. So I could open Microsoft Word and write a wee letter or something like that. Make the page layout. Now there are no TrueType fonts on here. These are just kind of fonts that each program has brought with it. Universe on here is basically equivalent to Arial. So let's see. I mean, these do scale, but it won't come out on the printer. Probably it's the same as it would come out on the screen. There we go. So I could test it, save it rather. Oh, File Manager's already running. Now, if I want to drag a file, it seems in this version of File Manager to see files in a directory, you actually have to double click on it. And if you're working with a lot of files, you end up with a lot of windows. It's kind of like Windows 95 in that sense. You open My Computer, you open C Drive, you open a bunch of folders, you get a load of windows cluttering the desktop. I can see this being a thing in Microsoft Windows File Manager for Windows 3.0. So I can actually drag and drop to copy files in here, and I can also call up the document from the File Manager. File associations were available in Windows 2.x as well, but when I tried loading up a Word document in Windows 2.x, it didn't work as well as I'd expected, unfortunately. Yeah. Now, can I drag a document into Microsoft Word for editing? Nope! It won't let me. Will it at least let me drag a... Alt Tab doesn't seem to want to work in here because PCM, it's just just a wee bug. Then again, it's a computer emulator rather than a hypervisor, and for that I thank it. Nope, I can't even do that. That's absolutely fine. But there was Windows 3.0 was the first version to come with Paintbrush as we know it today. And you might notice we're in 256 color mode. So there are certain colors that we can get access to, like I believe this kind of jade green color. Let me see. Nope, that's still a dithered one. But there are colors that are not dithered. For example, this rather fetching light blue. And then there's also a different shade of grey. No 50 Shades of Grey jokes, please. And this very light coloured yellow, which are also available in the default Windows 256 colour palette. And this was the first drawing program I believe I ever used on Windows. I was so fascinated with it back in the day. As you see, you got a fair amount of programs. And because this is the multimedia edition of Windows 3.0, you did get sound, and you got some programs that would take advantage of it. So, for example, you got an alarm clock, you got the hyperguide, you got a music box which would play CDs, a sound recorder, and media player. So we could actually play a WAV file.
Tandy presents the world of multimedia.
Yeah, this is a Tandy version of Windows 3.0 Multimedia Edition. And while there's no MIDI files installed on this version of Windows, the install CD that I used to install this version of Windows does have Canyon.mid on it. So what would happen if I tried running some DOS applications? Well, let's run WordPerfect 5.1, and oh dear, requires a newer version of Microsoft Windows. That's no way to address a DOS program. What is this? So that is Windows 3.0. In April 1992, Microsoft released Windows 3.1, which introduced several enhancements and features that truly made Windows a viable desktop operating system environment, including improved system stability, expanded support for multimedia, TrueType fonts, and workgroup networking. Windows 3.1 was designed to have backward compatibility with older Windows platforms. As with Windows 3.0, version 3.1 had File Manager and Program Manager. But, unlike all previous versions of Windows, version 3.1 cannot be run in rail mode. It included Minesweeper, which had previously been included with the Windows Entertainment Pack, as a replacement for Reversi, although Reversi was still included in some copies. Now, Windows 3.1 dropped rail mode support and required a minimum of a 286 PC with a megabyte of RAM to run. The reason this was done was to increase system stability over the crash-prone Windows 3.0. Some older features were also removed, like CGA graphics support, although Windows 3.0 CGA drivers still worked on Windows 3.1, and compatibility with rail mode Windows 2.x applications was also dropped. TrueType font support was added, providing scalable fonts to Windows applications without having to resort to use a third-party font technology such as Adobe Type Manager. Windows 3.1 included the following fonts: Arial, Career New, Times New Roman, and Symbol, a collection of scalable symbols in regular, bold, italic, and bold italic versions. TrueType fonts could be scaled to any size and rotated depending on the calling application. In 386 Enhanced mode, windowed DOS applications gained the ability for users to manipulate the menus and other objects in the program using the Windows mouse pointer, as long as a DOS application supported mouse input. A few DOS applications could even access Windows' own clipboard. Windows' own drivers, however, could not work directly with DOS applications. So, for example, you would need to have a DOS mouse driver installed to take advantage of mouse functionality. Icons can be dragged and dropped for the first time. A file could be dragged, for example, onto the Print Manager icon and would be printed by the current printer. Also, a file could be dragged out of the File Manager and onto an application icon or window for processing. While Windows 3.0 was limited to 16 megs maximum of memory, Windows 3.1 can access a theoretical 4 GB in 386 Enhanced mode. The actual practical calling is 256 megabytes, however. No single process can use more than 16 megabytes. File Manager was also significantly improved over Windows 3.0. Multimedia support was enhanced over what was available in Windows 3.0 with multimedia extensions, and available to all Windows 3.1 users. So now, let's actually take a look at Windows 3.1 in action. So this is what you'd see when you booted up Windows 3.1. Now, this is pretty much exactly like Windows 3.0, apart from the color scheme. Now, the Windows 3.1 color scheme is a wee bit of an oddity, because certain drivers will give you a dark blue title bar with the default color scheme. Certain display drivers will make Windows 3.1 look like 3.0 in terms of the color scheme. And then other device drivers, especially some of the later ones, would give you a color scheme that looked like this with the light blue title bar. I've always quite liked this version because it just kind of makes Windows 3.1 look a wee bit more grown up, if you will. So let's have a play about in Windows 3.1. So again, you have the Program Manager, and we can run Office. Now, one thing that you'll notice is, unlike Windows 3.0, Windows that don't have the active focus will continue to keep their window controls. Windows 3.0 would just get rid of window controls for background windows entirely. Not sure why that did that. But if we go into the file manager, we see that it has improved no end. Yes, you can still have multiple windows. So, for example, whoopsie. So, for example, I could open another instance of Drive C, makes things easier for dragging and dropping, but we now have two panes. One pane for the directory structure and one pane for the files within the folder. Makes things a lot tidier. And remember I was trying to drag and drop in Windows 3.0 earlier? Well, let's try it in here. So I can launch Microsoft Word 6. Again, I'm going to have to use the task switcher to go back to the file manager. So here's a document I made. Hang on a minute. No, it's in one word. Swim.doc. Now if I drag that, then it should open in Microsoft Word. What it's actually doing, oh, there we go, right, I think yeah, oh my, this document looks a lot more mangled than it was. Come on, Word, what's the story? Oh dear. So pressing undo will close the document. Oh well. But take it from me, that feature does work. Windows 3.1 actually has sound intrinsically built into the operating system, so you do not have to buy a special multimedia version of Windows. So we can play wave sounds. And we also have MIDI sounds. We have Canyon.mid. That also works. And the control panel has been improved. So in Windows 3.0, I forgot to show you the control panel, but you clicked on an icon and it used to give the control panel applet name and version number, whereas in 3.1 it actually tells you what it does. So if I go to display, for example, it'll say changes the look of your desktop. And the desktop control panel applet will not only allow you to select a pattern or desktop background, but it will also allow you to select a screensaver. Screensavers were not originally part of Windows 3.0, but were a part of Windows 3.0 Multimedia Edition. So while we're in Windows 3.1, let's take a look at some of its capabilities. Microsoft Multimedia. So this is a Microsoft home product, musical instrument. So there we go. You can see that this is actually playing music. It's wave music. So this piece of software is kind of an encyclopedia about different musical instruments. So we could take a look at musical instruments in many contexts, such as musical instruments of the world. So let's do that. We could go to Europe and then to Scotland. And we can learn about the Highland pipes. Again, we actually have a sound, so we can actually listen to what the Highland bagpipes sound like. And there's even a speaker icon next to the name. So should you have any problems pronouncing it,
Highland bagpipe,
you have an American accented pronunciation. Right. Could also find out about could also go into the sound box, actually listen to the note. Oh dear. Well, that G was a wee bit off. James, I know that piper. He in 2011 he used to play on Waverley Bridge. It's a bit of a shame actually, because the pipes can sound a lot better than that. And that's the last thing. And it's quite funny actually. I'm going off tangent here, but there's I remember in 2011 there was two pipers. Certainly seemed to be one that was really good and one that was a bit meh. And sometimes, and you'd find one of them on Waverley Bridge as you took the stairs out of the train station onto the bridge itself, and one further along Princess Street. And I think they would swap, because sometimes you'd hear really good pipes on the bridge and really crappy ones on Princess Street, and then sometimes it would be vice versa. But yeah, here we go. We've got facts box about the bagpipes and all kind of stuff like that. I must say though, playing the bagpipes is not an easy feat. I don't play the bagpipes myself, so yeah, I'm sorry for criticising. Anyway, now, no demonstration would be complete without a wee game. So, this one goes out to Billy Carr. Yep, and there's Windows optimizing itself. There you go, Windows, you're still optimizing yourself. Oh, come on, Windows. Just a wee bit further. And we're done. So as you can see there, we have video. So I could start a new set.
Spline.
A new city. Janice Hill. depressing sounding MIDI song. So, let's see. Should we, And there we go, I've planted some new trees. So, I think that'll do it. I think I've done well. So, that was a demonstration of Windows 3.1. Windows 3.1 was made available on the following media: 720K or 1.44 meg 3.5 inch floppy disks, 1.2 meg 5.25 inch floppy disks, and it was the first version of Windows to be distributed on CD-ROM. This, however, was more common for Windows for Workgroups 3.11, which typically came with MS-DOS 6.22 on one CD. The installed size of the operating system on the hard disk was between 10 and 15 megabytes. 32-bit disk access through 86 enhanced mode only brought improved performance by using a 32-bit protected mode driver instead of the 16-bit BIOS functions, which necessitates Windows temporarily dropping out of protected mode. Windows 3.1 also introduced the Windows Registry. This was, and still is, a centralized database that can store configuration information and settings for various operating system components and applications. There were localized versions of Windows 3.1, such as 3.1 for Central and Eastern Europe. There was also a version of Windows 3.1 in simplified Chinese. Later, an update to this version was issued that identified itself as Windows 3.2. The update was limited to this language version as it only fixed issues related to the complex input system for the Chinese language. Windows 3.11 was released on November the 8th, 1993. This version did not add any feature improvements over Windows 3.1. It only corrected problems. Microsoft replaced all retail versions of Windows 3.1 with Windows 3.11 and provided a free upgrade to anyone who currently owned Windows 3.1. Windows for Workgroups, originally codenamed Winball and later Sparta, released in October 1992. It's an extended version of Windows 3.1 that features native networking support. It comes with the SMB file sharing support via NetBIOS-based NBF and or the IPX network transcript protocols, and introduces the Hearts card game and vshare.386, which was a VXD version of share.exe, a terminate and stay resident program. Windows for Workgroups 3.11 was released on August the 11th, 1993. This shipped in November 1993. It supported 32-bit file access, full 32-bit network redirectors, and vcache.386 file cache shared between them. Windows for Workgroups 3.11 dropped standard mode support and requires a 386 machine to run. A WinSock package was required to support TCP/IP networking in Windows 3.x. Usually third-party packages were used, such as Trumpet WinSock. But in August 1994, Microsoft released an add-on package codenamed Wolverine that provided TCP/IP support in Windows for Workgroups 3.11. Wolverine was a 32-bit stack accessible from the 16-bit Windows applications via WinSock Thunk, which gave it superior performance to most of the third-party TCP/IP Windows stacks available. However, it was only compatible with Windows for Workgroups 3.11 and lacked support for dial-up. Wolverine stack was an early version of the TCP/IP stack that would later ship with Windows 95, and provided an early test bed for the 16 to 32-bit compatibility layer that was crucial for Windows 95's success. Following the release of MS-DOS 6.22 in 1994, Windows for Workgroups 3.11 largely replaced Windows 3.1 for OEM installations on new PCs due to its improved capabilities and greater stability. Over the life of Windows 3.1, Microsoft made available quite a few add-ons. The first of which was Video for Windows, and this was produced in November 1992 as a reaction to Apple Computer's QuickTime technology, which added digital video to the Macintosh. Costing around $200 at the time, the software included an editing and video encoding programs for use with video input boards. A runtime version for viewing videos only was also made available. Originally, this was released as a free add-on to Windows 3.1x, but then became an integral component of Windows 95 and later. Like QuickTime, there were 3 components in Videos for Windows. The technology introduced a file format designed to store digital video, known as the Audio Video Interleave, or AVI format. The technology provided an application programming interface that allowed Windows software developers to add the ability to play or manipulate digital video to their own applications. Lastly, it included a suite of software that actually played and manipulated digital video. The second add-on was Windows for Pen Computing. Windows for Pen Computing was a series of Microsoft-produced add-ons for Microsoft Windows versions in the mid-1990s, with additional tools for tablet PCs. Yes, they were around then. Windows for Pen Computing, also known as Pen Windows and W4PC, was developed as Microsoft's Pen Computing response to PenPoint OS by Go Corporation. Windows for Pen Computing was rendered obsolete by Tablet PC support for Windows XP Tablet PC Edition in 2002. Another add-on called Win32s was also made available. Windows 3.1x was given limited compatibility with the then new 32-bit Windows API used by Windows NT by another add-on package, Win32s. There was a rumour that Microsoft did not want to increase any mainstream Windows 3.1x version to something like Windows 3.2 because it could be confused with the Win32 API or otherwise distract customers from upgrading to a real 32-bit operating system, like the then upcoming Windows 95 was. Well, kind of. Though Windows NT 3.1 and 3.5 were both 32-bit operating systems that looked similar in appearance, a game called FreeCell was included for testing the new Win32 functions. To entice game manufacturers to move from DOS to Windows, Microsoft provided a first attempt at high-speed graphics and animation capabilities for Windows 3.1x. Introduced in September 1994, Windows' GDI capabilities were originally designed with static images in mind, allowing only for write-only graphics calls. WinG provided a device-independent interface for graphics and printer hardware, and allowed programs to have both read and write capabilities to the WinG device context. Windows 3.1 introduced new possibilities for applications, especially multimedia applications. During this era, Microsoft developed a new range of software that was implemented on this operating system environment, called Microsoft Home. Microsoft Bob being one of these programs. As the first version of Windows to enjoy major commercial success in software support, Windows 3.1 and Windows for Workgroups 3.11 quickly replaced DOS as the platform for application software on PC compatibles. Multimedia software, especially games, proliferated, although many games continued to run on DOS until Windows 95. Internet Explorer version 2 through version 5 were also released for Windows 3.1x. So, what about the main element of Windows 3.x, the Program Manager? Well, while it seemed a lot easier to use than the MS-DOS Executive, a lot of people did not like it, and as a result, a slew of alternative shells and add-ons were made available to make Windows 3.x easier to use, such as Norton Desktop, Xerox's Rooms for Windows, and my personal favourite, Plugin for Windows by Planet Crafters Inc. Microsoft themselves tried making Windows 3.1 easier to use with Microsoft Bob, which I mentioned earlier. Later on, there was a shell called Chimera, which mimicked the look of Windows 95 on Windows 3.1. As this was open source, there were alternative versions made that offered things like long file name support, as well as versions that tried to make Windows 3.1 look like Windows XP, Windows Vista, and even Windows 7. As far as I know, however, the original Chimera is the most stable version. Windows 3.x was superseded by the release of Windows 95 in August 1995. Microsoft officially dropped support for all 16-bit versions of Windows on December the 31st, 2001. Windows 3.1 found a niche market as an embedded operating system after becoming obsolete in the PC world. As of November 2008, both Virgin Atlantic and Qantas employed it for some of the onboard entertainment systems on long-distance jets. It also sees continued use as an embedded operating system in retail cash tills. It was also used as a secondary application in DOSBox to enable the emulation of Win16 games on 64-bit Windows versions. On July the 9th, 2008, it was announced that Windows for Workgroups 3.11 for the embedded device channel would no longer be made available for OEM distribution as of November the 1st, 2008. So that is the story of Windows 3.1. It was a significant version of Windows, not only for Microsoft, but for a lot of computer users as well, myself included. It cemented Microsoft's place in the graphical user interface market and made software developers start to take Windows seriously. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the Flying Scotsman YouTube page on Facebook, and following me on Twitter. You can also click to watch my latest video from here. In the meantime, please do stay tuned for my next video.